Good Yom Tiv. We're continuing the Maimer Mimona Afar Yaakov that the Rebbe said on Shabbos Parshat Chukas Balak Yud Beis Tammuz Tavshin Yud Beis. We spoke earlier about the difference between Amida and Hiluch. Amida, standing, doesn't mean to stand in one place. That my today is just like yesterday and tomorrow is just like today. Because we're talking about a type of avodah of Amida. Avodah means to work. It's impossible that I can work and stand in one place. It's impossible for a person that's serious about life, about doing things, that his today should be just like yesterday and his tomorrow should be like today. That's something that doesn't work. Yet, Amida means that despite the fact that I'm going, and perhaps even going far distances, but yet the place that I'm going from one place to the other is within realms, one to the other. It's related to the earlier place that I was in. An example for that is what we learned in the Maimer, the concept of Talmud Bavli. If one is learning Gemara Talmud Bavli, and from Talmud Bavli he goes deeper and deeper, the depth from one level to the other could be a vast amount of difference. But yet, the more he knows, the more he'll understand, and everything that he knew and learned previously is only going to help and assist him in his future understanding, because no matter how far they are from one another, they're still within relation. It's the same type of understanding. And yet to go from Talmud Bavli to Talmud Yerushalmi, in order to do that, one must forget everything that he learned previously in Talmud Bavli. We're talking about people like Reb Zera, who was a great Amayra, and therefore his study of Talmud Bavli was on the proper level, and his study of Talmud Yerushalmi was on the proper level, in the proper way, and therefore when he learned Talmud Yerushalmi properly, the previous understanding of Talmud Bavli was only going to confuse the understanding of Talmud Yerushalmi. Similar to the idea of a neshama when it goes from this world to the next world, everything that the neshama was able to reach and achieve in this world, even in a spiritual level, because it's one type of achievement, it confuses the neshama in the new achievement that it's only able to reach when it leaves the body. It left from one state to a totally different state. And the example we gave last time is like the difference. When we talk about the difference between a Rebbe and a regular person, and we say that the difference is like between a human and a cat. Now if we were saying that between the human and the cat, it's a vast difference, yet it's a difference which can be understood, it could be grasped, it could be measured. But if we say that compared to him, the human and the cat are the same, meaning it's a totally different plane, it's a totally different realm. And like the idea that Ishtalshalos is a chain, and in a chain the highest link, even if there's 100 million links, and yet the highest link and the lowest link are in somewhat connected to one another, and then there's another idea of going beyond the Ishtalshalos, beyond the chain. And in the same concept, the neshama, before it came down into this world, was limited in its own constraints. What are its constraints? Its intellect and emotions. Now even though it's constantly striving and it's constantly moving from one place to the other, which means the intellect and emotions could be going from one level to a totally level beyond, vast, far distance than the level that it was in. But it's like the difference between 1 and a million. It's not able to leave its constraints, no matter how far it goes, it's going to be within the realms of its intellect and emotions. Then there's the avodah of halicha, of going, which that the neshama gets through coming down into this physical body. When the neshama comes into the physical body and connects to the physical body, it connects as such to its own, to the new constraints, the constraints and the limitations of the physical body. And because it's a different limitation, not its own, that itself pushes it to go beyond its own limitations, beyond its own understanding and intellect, to a level that's beyond understanding and intellect. The difference in intellect and understanding, one can go very far, but to go from intellect and understanding to beyond intellect and understanding is a complete move, mahalech, that's called going, because there a person actually went from one place to the next to a different level, a level that's beyond them. To give a practical example in connection to something which is in Yana de Yaima, which has to do with today's day. Today is Yud Beis Tammuz. It's the day that we celebrate the liberation of the previous Rebbe in communist Russia from his imprisonment and later on his exile in Kostroma for the fact that he spread Torah and Yiddishkeit. And the day of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, the 12th and the 13th of Tammuz, the previous Rebbe said should be a holiday to be celebrated every year stronger and stronger. This year is 90 years, which means 90 years where the liberation happens again and again. And as the Frierdiker Rebbe said, it's not his personal liberation. It's the liberation of Torah and of mitzvahs, and it's the liberation of every Jew, even one who b'shem Yisrael Yechuna, the name Yisrael is only like an additional name for him. It doesn't even feel to him as if this is his very essence. How does one celebrate this Yom Tov? Just like Rosh Hashanah we celebrate by hearing the shofar. Purim we celebrate by hearing the Megillah. Yud Beis Tammuz, the previous Rebbe said the celebration expressed itself by taking part in a Farbrengen or in a few Farbrengens throughout the day. At the Farbrengens is a time when a person sits together with others and they discuss and work together on strengthening Torah and mitzvahs. Now the difference between a person sitting by a Farbrengen for 5 minutes or sitting by a Farbrengen for 5 hours is a vast difference. It's 5 hours worth of Farbrengen. But yet it's a difference which is within the same realm. It's in relation, it's related one to the other. The difference between not coming at all and coming even for 5 minutes, that's an infinite difference. Now, the Rebbe continues to say that even the avodah of hiluch, of going, which means beyond limitations, is in a certain sense is also limited. What caused the person, what caused the neshama to realize that I have to go beyond my limitations? My realization itself, my understanding itself, my tam vidas, brought me to the realization that I have to go beyond understanding. Although that's maybe called a yediyas hashlila, means it's a negative, I didn't understand what I have to do, I just understand that to be limited in these constraints of understanding is not good enough. So I understand that I have to go beyond understanding, but it's my understanding that led me there. And therefore it's, in a sense, it's still limited. Like the story that the Rebbe tells that there was a Jew, a German Jew, who became close to Chabad and he began to study Chassidus to the extent that he understood and he learned a lot of Chassidus. And he understood also the avodah of davening, which is something that comes as a result of Chassidus, to actually work on davening properly. And one time he mentioned, he said in passing to the previous Rebbe that my echad in Krishma is balde eine minuta. The echad that I say when I say Shema takes 60 seconds, takes a minute. And he meant it in earnestness. But the Rebbe says here's an interesting thing, that you can have a person who has that concept of limitation, that even his beyond limitation, his misirus nefesh, his going out of himself, going beyond himself, which that's the whole idea of echad, is also limited because it also comes from an understanding. Dilug, however, jumping means going totally beyond, going totally outside of any type of limitation whatsoever. It's not even a limitation of going beyond limitation. It's something where a person left it totally. And the example is In Chassidus, when it talks about the difference between Amida, standing, walking, and jumping, so it explains that when a person stands in one place, both feet are on the ground, which means I'm connected to the ground, to my existence, with both feet. When a person walks, he's constantly lifting his feet from the ground, one at a time, but also putting it back down. So I'm going away from my existence, from being grounded, yet I'm constantly returning to it. So even when I lift one foot up, there's one foot on the ground. Whereas Dilug is jumping with both feet and going totally beyond. And that's the idea of the difference between Hiluch and Dilug. That Hiluch still has some type of connection to understanding. And therefore there still is a struggle, there still is a war, there still is another side that I have to fight. It's still me, it's still my limitation that causes me to understand that I have to go beyond understanding. And therefore there's still a fight because there still is an existence of another side. The Avodah of Dilug is where I'm going totally beyond, I'm connecting myself to something which is totally higher. What does this mean in the Avodah of Sfiris? The Avodah of Amida, we explained, is the concept of Zah, which is Zer Anpin, the small face, meaning drawing down godliness into the world the way it's limited within the Ishtalshalos, the chain of the worldly revelations. The Avodah of Hiluch is going beyond limitations. That's in Keser. Keser is above Ishtalshalos, it's above the limited world. It's like the crown, which is above the head. It's beyond the chain of the godly revelation that's limited in its way that it comes limited into the world. However, in Keser, there's two levels. There's Chitzonius HaKeser, the outer level of Keser, and in general, the concept of the outer level of something. When we have something, we have an outer level and an inner level. The outer level means the way it relates to other things. The inner level means the thing itself. So there's Keser, the way it's above the world, but it relates to the world. The inner level of Keser means the essence of Keser itself, the essence of godliness that's beyond the world. And that's why the outer level of Keser is called Arich Anpin, meaning the way godliness comes into the world is called Ze'er Anpin, the small face. The way godliness is above the world is called Arich Anpin, the big face. The difference, it's still a face, the difference is if it's small or big, but they're still in relation to one another. And that's like when we talk about Memale Kol Almin and Seviv Kol Almin. There's the light, the godly light that comes into the world. So it's limited within the realms of the world. There's Seviv Kol Almin, the godly light that's above the world, but yet it's still called Seviv Kol Almin. It encompasses the world, it's above the world, but it's connected to the fact that it's above the world. Then we have the essence of the light, which is beyond anything. It's the light itself, it's godliness itself. It has no connection and no relation to the world. And that's called, in the words of Kabbalah and Chassidus, Atik Yoimin. Not like Chitzonius HaKeser, which is Arich Anpin, the big face. This is Atik. Atik means removed. It's removed from the world. It's not above the world, it's totally removed from the world. That's the essence of godliness. And that's the depth. When a person comes to that level, he's not fighting anymore. There's no two sides. There's the essence. This is the way it is and no differently. That's a Mesirus Nefesh that doesn't come because my limited self told me that I have to go beyond myself. Here it's the essence of godliness. This is the way it is and there's no questions any differently. How does a person come to that level where he's not fighting, doesn't have another side that he's arguing or discussing with? This is the way it is. That's the idea of the Avodah of Tshuva. Like the Rambam says that in Avodah of Tshuva, yesterday this person was separate from Hashem, and today he becomes totally one with Hashem. The Avodah of Tshuva is the fact, not that I realize that I have to go beyond myself. The constraints, the tightness, the meitzar brings the person to just totally go until his life isn't a life anymore. He feels that I have to connect to Hashem and there's no other way. That's Dilug. That's the Avodah of jumping. So even the Avodah of Hiluch is that I go beyond limitations, but it was my limitations that brought me there. The Avodah of Dilug is jumping completely beyond in a way that I'm connecting to the essence because I feel my limitations bring me to the essential need to go beyond myself. And that's why also Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the ultimate meitzar, the ultimate constraints, was in a way of Dilug. Why? Because if there had been any level of godliness that came down into Mitzrayim, would be stuck over there in Mitzrayim. It had to be the very essence of godliness that doesn't connect to the world. Nigla aleim melech malchei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvayde u'v'atzmei. The revelation of kvayde and atzmei, which means the very essence of Hashem, which in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, it's Malchus, in Seven Teferes HaNelam, which we will, Be'ezus Hashem, continue tomorrow. Good Yom Tov.